Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, bonamiliwanji, namaste, jumbo. Bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so honored and so wicked happy that you'll join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show, and please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Good Pods, wherever you find your podcasts. Our guest today is J.E. Morris. She is here to celebrate Flubby. Before we invite our guests into the studio, we want to let you know that we have a brand new Reading with Your Kids certified great read, The Wonderful Once, written by J.R. Bukta. It is a heartwarming tale that takes readers on a magical journey filled with generosity, kindness, and the transformative power of selflessness. The story unfolds in a small village nestled in a peaceful valley where the simple joys of life are celebrated. The author paints a vivid picture of the close-knit community where villagers engage in lively festivities, children play in the streets, and a special school cares for those without homes. The narrative beautifully captures the essence of a quaint village, making it easy for readers to immerse themselves in the charming setting. The turning point of the story occurs during the annual winter festival when Lucas, the youngest child, experiences the joy of giving. The moment he selflessly offers his cherished sleigh to a new girl at the school sets the stage for a magical transformation. The introduction of the spirit of giving adds a touch of enchantment to the narrative, guiding Lucas on a path to fulfill his dream of bringing happiness to children all over the world. Our team loved The Wonderful Ones. We know that you and your family are going to love it too. It's the perfect holiday book. What a great book to sit down and cuddle up and read with your kids. Get your copy today. The Wonderful Ones by J.R. Bukta, our latest Reading with Your Kids certified great read. Join us right now from the great state of Massachusetts, my hometown. We are here to celebrate a beautiful picture book. It's called Flubby Does Not Like Snow. Please welcome to the show the author, J.E. Morris. Hey, Jennifer, how are you?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm delighted to have you on. Always love having a neighbor on in Massachusetts. We're a small state, but there's a lot of really talented, creative people here.
Oh my gosh, there's so many book people here. It's children's book. It's amazing. There's something in the water, I think.
I think so. We don't want them to filter that out. So tell us about Flubby, who does not like snow. If he was created in Massachusetts, he's in trouble.
He's in trouble. This is the fifth book in the series. Mm-hmm. Flubby was a real cat. He was, but this is an easy reader series. And, this is the latest. We wanted to do a, holiday version. So we went with kind of just a generic snow theme to this one. Yeah. And,
talk a little bit about what an easy reader is and how that differs from other books.
Well, excuse me, easy readers are books that pretty much have a simpler vocabulary, probably a shorter word count, and they're designed for kids to read on their own independently. So these are the first books that kids are really going to absorb on their own. They're meant to be read independently. I mean, they all obviously can be read to a child too, but these are oftentimes the first books that a kid gets to pick themselves. They're usually a little less expensive, so oftentimes these are the books the parents will go into the bookstore. Okay, go pick yourself out a book. And so I feel like, I feel like I'm kind of on the front lines a little bit, and kind of these are the first books that you're really trying to engage a child, one-on-one almost. Yeah. So it kind of has some different things that you have to be aware of as far as, staying within a child's frame of reference, because you don't necessarily have that adult, kind of reading it with them always. So that's an interesting, challenge for someone of my age, because, kids now, they only know cell phones. They don't know a lot of the things that were around when I was a kid aren't there anymore. So I can't really reference older things. So, it brings its own challenges, which is fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm wondering, I oftentimes will talk and ask authors, hey, do you ever think about the fact that there are going to be hundreds, thousands of families snuggled up on the couch together reading your picture book? I know that you're aware of these kind of parameters that you have to write in for this group, but do you ever think about the fact that Flubby could be the very first book that a kid reads on their own, and a very first book that a kid experiences that sense of empowerment that they get when they're able to read a book and run and go, Mom, Dad, I did this. I did it by myself.
Yeah. And, I really didn't realize that when I got into this. My very first book, when it was published, I had submitted it as a wordless picture book. I consider myself an illustrator. I was like, I don't write, I draw pictures. And, it was picked up by Scholastic, and they said, we want to add it to our Easy Reader program. So let's work with you. We'll put some words in there and we'll turn it into an Easy Reader. So that was my first, experience with Easy Reader books. And then I got a few fan letters from parents, and they said, my kid has latched onto this book. We had to buy a new copy because they sleep with it, and I was like, oh, okay. So, you kind of realize the importance of these little paperback books to some of these kids. And yeah, this is their book. I can read it, and I can do all those things. So yeah, that was a big eye opener for me. And, cause I think back then it was like 2005, my first book was published. And I think back then, like, easy readers weren't given, I think there's been a lot more attention given to them in like the last 10 years or so. Back then, I don't think the publishers were giving them quite as much, attention. So I was like, oh, my first book is an easy reader book. And everyone's like, oh, an easy reader book. And, but then, you get these fan letters and you're like, okay, this is what's really important. Yeah. This is, I'm doing something good here.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. And, that book's still chugging. So.
Well, that's really great. And it's wonderful. I think that publishers have their eyes have been opened, because I remember, obviously you made an impression because I remember, but I remember I think the first book I read was a Dick and Jane book, which, millions of kids, it was their first book. But man, talk about boring. I mean, there was Dick runs down the street. Dick was, this is a book that kids are excited to read. And I think the whole way of looking at reading, I think, has really grown a lot since, 100 years ago when I was a kid.
Oh, definitely. I think back in the 1950s, there was what was a book, Why Johnny Can't Read. And, there was a lot of media attention about how, like, books like Dick and Jane, I mean, I don't want to bash them, but yeah, they weren't exactly, edgy or seat reading. And I think back then, Dr. Seuss and a handful of people really took charge and really worked on this easy reader kind of genre. And it was there were some amazing books back then. I mean, you had, The Cat in the Hat and Little Bear and some really great books that are still around. And then kind of lulled a little bit. And I think we're kind of back in a more of a renaissance of, Mo Willems has done amazing stuff with Elephant and Piggy and all those. And so,
yeah. Well, I'm really happy to hear that. I think that an easy reader book and Flubby is one of those books that, it's hard for parents. It was hard for me when my daughter, my son started reading. I didn't realize he was reading independently when he was like 4. He wouldn't let me know because he wanted me to read to him. But then when he got to kindergarten, his teacher comes up to me and says, "Oh, he's great. He's reading." And I'm like, what do you mean he's reading? It's like, yeah, he's reading independently.
He was playing,
yeah. And the following year, he's reading Harry Potter. And it's like, okay. My daughter was younger and she didn't pick up on reading as quickly as my son. And when it came time for her to start reading independently, it was sad for me. And, I was really happy that she was able to do it, but I also missed it. And when her second grade teacher came up to me and said, "You have to keep reading to her," I'm like, dude, I'm all in. No problem. Don't have to tell me twice. So I think that this is book, one of those books that we can celebrate with our kids, and especially when your kid reads it on their own, this is wonderful to say, "Hey, can you read it to me?
Mm-hmm.
Can we turn the tables and can you read this to me?" And then can we just continue to celebrate the fact that we can share this gift of reading and books together?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it broke my heart when my kids were like, "I don't need you to read to me anymore." And I was like sitting there, but, with the book in my hand, following them around the house. I need this.
So as somebody who sees themselves as an illustrator, how was it that you got into it? Because there are a lot of folks out there who love art and love to draw and love to create illustrations. But the thought of, I can do this thing that I love as a job, that for a lot of folks that doesn't, compute. It's like, no, I have to go out and work in the factory or work in an office or whatever. How did you make that happen for yourself?
Well, I was originally a computer programmer and a database specialist. So I came about this very roundabout. I minored in art in college, but I was a database specialist. And when my children were born, my first child, my daughter, had some health problems, so daycare wasn't really an option, and work from home wasn't really a thing back then. So I was home with the kids, and this was my chance. I always wanted to draw, so this was my chance to throw some samples out there and see if I could hook any work. And I really wanted to do children's books, so as a drawing exercise, I made this wordless picture book just to show to potential clients that I could, carry a character through a story arc, basically. And that was the book that got picked up by Scholastic. So for probably years, people would say, "Oh, are you an author?" And I'd say, "No." But you have a book. I'm like, "No, I'm not an author." So I feel like I can finally say that, but I have I think 13 books out, and now I can finally say, "Yeah, I'm an author." Okay.
Well, that's really cool. But it must have taken incredible chutzpah to just go from okay, I'm here at my kids and I'm doing these drawings. There are a lot of folks who just can't get up the nerve to then put their work out there to face potential rejection. What was it that gave you the kind of kick in the backside to actually get it out there and start sharing your work?
Oh, heck, well, the worst that's going to happen is they're going to say no. I mean, it's not that bad. So, and I get told no plenty. My first book got published like that, super fast. And then I had a lot of no's after that. So, Yeah, if you never try, you'll never know. And I have too many friends, relatives who kept saying maybe someday, and someday never came. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'm like, I'll take no over not trying.
Yeah.
So it's just, yeah, what are they going to, and I actually didn't start with children's books. I actually started in greeting cards. I started sending some greeting card samples out, and I did work for, Party Supply Company, doing illustrations for their paper plates and their Mylar balloons and stuff. And that's actually the first jobs I had.
Yeah.
The kids were real little.
Well, you sit there and you go, what's the worst that can happen? I can hear no. For a lot of people, that's the worst that can happen. But I think I'm really happy that you're reminding folks, and hopefully we can remind our kids that a no, a failure, trip, fumble on the football field, it's just a bump, just one of many bumps in the road that we're going to experience in life. The trick is to get up and to continue on.
Oh gosh, yes. There's been so many times I've just wanted to go get like a normal job and, go be a administrator or go back to computer programming. And I'm just like, let me just stick it. I've been sticking at it for, 20 years now. But yeah, that's half of it, is just not giving up right away. And I think in anything you do, you can't give up on the first failure, because that's where you learn, is on those failures. I'd rather someone come back and give me a whole bunch of criticism, constructive criticism, but at least then I can move forward. If you don't get that, you can never move forward.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember I wrote something independently in college, and I went and asked my English teacher if he could read it and give me feedback. And he just turned to me really quickly and he said, well, do you want me to tell you it's great, or do you want me to tell you what I really feel? And I don't know what my expression was, but however it was, I didn't like how he responded to my expression. And I said, well, never mind. Let me just say this.
Well, if it makes you feel better, I asked one of my English teachers in college about a children's book idea he had, and basically he's like, this sucks, more or less. Like, okay, I guess I won't do that. But yeah. But then you kind of then I didn't do it again for ages. I was like, kind of crushed. But now I'll have a day or two where I lick my wounds and say, well, they don't know what they're talking about. And then on the third day, I'm like, yeah, they were probably right.
Yeah.
And you move on. That's all you can do, right?
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about this real life inspiration for Flubby.
Oh, poor cat. Well, when my kids were in high school, we, as a family, me and the kids, we'd go down to the we have a cat shelter in town, so they're strictly cats. So we would go down there in the evenings and we'd, clean litter boxes and help out with the cats, play with the kittens and stuff. So, that didn't take too long before we had to adopt a cat. So we adopted one, and then he was, a young tomcat, and but then we all decided, Max, his name was Max. Max needed a friend, so we went back to the cat shelter and said, okay, what cat would get along with this, cat we already own? And they said, well, we got this one guy here, and he will get along with any cat. We swear he won't cause trouble. He'll be great, but he's getting picked on. The other cats are picking on him because they're one of these shelters that has like a big room full of cats, not like individual little. So they said, he's getting picked on. He's getting bullied. So he said, all right. And he's like, he's such a sweet cat. You need to bring him home. He needs a home. So they bring out this cat that has been picked on, and they bring out this mammoth marshmallow. It was like 18 pounds, this huge cat. Plop him down, and he's just like, kind of bug-eyed. Like, I'm like, this is what's getting picked on? And they're like, yeah, everyone picks on him. So his name was Handsome, and we brought him home, and he was, this enormous round cat. And my son kind of quickly started calling him Flubby. And then, we had to put Flubby on a diet. Flubby liked to eat But I kept drawing little cartoons of him in my sketchbook just because he was such a character and he was a personality. So I would draw these little cartoons and I said, well, maybe I can make this into something more for kids. And he was also a pain in the neck because he was so food motivated that he would just beg me for food all day long. Mm-hmm. And I was like, one day he was just driving me nuts. And I'm like, why do I have this cat in the house? He's driving me nuts. And that was kind of like the whole story of the first book, Flubby's Not a Good Pet. Mm-hmm. And it was just kind of like, yeah, but he's there. He's sweet. He's my friend. He's my companion. He gives me love. I give him love. And that was really kind of the whole premise of the first book was, why do we have these animals who chew up our furniture and pee on our carpets? What are we getting out of it? What are they getting out of it? So that was kind of the whole premise of how Flubby got started. And sadly, we've had to say goodbye to the real Flubby, but he lives on now.
He lives on, and he lives on. And his stories, the stories of that you chronicle in your series are helping kids really have a better life. And, it's the first step for them to develop a love of reading and develop that empathy that we get from reading books and figure out how we can deal with different situations through imagining, and being in the stories that we're reading. So Flubby's doing a good turn. He's changing lots of kids' lives.
I hope so. I was not a big reader as a kid, so I've kind of seen the light, as I've gotten older, and I'm like, oh, I missed all this when I was a kid. So like anytime I can encourage a kid and kind of give them that gateway drug to reading is awesome. So I wished I had caught the bug a lot earlier in life than I did. I think it would have been a good thing, a good friend to have those books.
So, Flubby, we're 5 books into the series. Will Flubby live on in more books?
Flubby's got another book coming out for Valentine's Day.
Oh.
So, yes, Flubby is still going strong. Yeah, awesome. It was hard because the whole gag in the first book was Flubby doesn't do anything. So then when they wanted more books, I'm like, well, the cat doesn't do anything. So it's been a challenge to come up with, it's been a fun challenge, but I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, you never know when a book's going to turn into a series. And so there's things that I've kind of started to realize, all right, I got to start thinking things out a little more as far as, what if this does become a series? Who are the characters? What is it, kind of a little more world building than I have done in the past. So I'm trying to be a little more conscious of that.
Well, that's really good. And I think that this is great. I'm imagining a kid sits down, reads his first Flubby. It's the first book that he or she has ever read independently. And it's like, I got to do this again. So it's great that there are these other books that they can just jump onto and just experience and get that sense of empowerment and that sense of pride that comes from accomplishing something like learning how to read independently.
Yeah. Oh boy, those series. I remember my kids. It's like every time there was a series, they would latch on. We read so many Magic Tree House books. So many.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And again, this is, part of your legacy. You're leaving these series for kids, and kids for years and years and years are going to be reading these books. And so,
gosh, I hope so.
I'm certainly glad that, you wouldn't take no for an answer, or you understood that the worst thing that could happen is they say no when you first reached out to folks talking about Flubby.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah. So, Jennifer, where can we go to find out more about Flubby and find out more about you?
Oh, well, you can go to my website, jemorris.com, or you can go to Penguin Random House's website. They have that there. Penguin Workshop is who publishes the Flubby books, but they're Penguin Random House division. So, yeah, they're all there.
Awesome. We've had a great time speaking to the author and illustrator. Flubby does not like snow. Our guest has been J.E. Morris. Jennifer, thanks so much for being with us.
Oh, thanks so much. Really, it was great.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. 2 great guests will be joining us. First, Raymond Arroyo. Yes, Raymond Arroyo. You've seen him on network television. He's been here on the podcast in the past. He will be back. We'll also be joined by Christopher Arsenault, a brand new debut author. That's the next episode of the podcast. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our guest, J.E. Morris. Please be sure to check out Flubby. We also want to congratulate J.R. Bukta. His book, The Wonderful Ones, is our latest Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read. I want to take a moment to thank my amazing team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Ann O'Leary, Soji Franklin. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.